I used to believe I knew my wife. Truly knew her. The small details that lovers claim like hidden treasures. The way she hummed when she read. How she never finished a cup of tea but always made one. The soft sigh she let out before falling asleep. We'd been married for 9 years, and in that time, I thought we'd built a life rooted in shared understanding. But it turns out, understanding can be a trick mirror. And love? Love can be blindfolded and spun in circles. It started with the weekends. At first, it was nothing unusual. Allison often went to visit her college friends, usually in the city an hour away. She'd pack a modest overnight bag, kiss our daughter goodnight, and leave just before sunset on Fridays. I never thought to question it. Our daughter, Lily, is 7 and usually needs extra attention on weekends anyway. I chalked up the break as healthy. Necessary even. Allie needs her recharge time. I'd tell myself as I tucked Lily into bed, her tiny hands clasped around her stuffed fox. I'd read to her, clean up after dinner, and then settle into the quiet. Sometimes I'd catch a game. Other times, I'd work late on design proposals for the architecture firm I ran from our home office. But more often than not, I found myself just waiting. And by Sunday evening, Allison would return, smiling, tired, and full of vague stories about brunches, movie nights, and catching up on girl talk. But then, I noticed the bags changed. The first time I caught it, she had packed a second, smaller bag. A sleek black one I'd never seen before, tucked discreetly beneath her usual overnight tote. I only saw it when I went into the closet for a winter scarf and found it sitting there, zipped halfway open. Inside, silk lingerie, makeup she never wore at home, and a bottle of perfume I didn't recognize. I stared at it for a long moment, not touching, not breathing. My mind raced. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she was dressing up for her friends. Maybe she wanted to feel good, to feel sexy for herself. Maybe. But that seed of doubt had taken root. And once doubt begins to grow, it doesn't stop. The next weekend, she left again. I kissed her goodbye at the door, holding her longer than usual, trying to memorize her. Her hair smelled like rose and sandalwood, definitely not her usual lavender shampoo. "You okay?" she asked, brushing a hand over my cheek. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." She smiled and gave Lily an exaggerated kiss on the nose before slipping into the cold evening. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the sound of the old radiator clinking rhythmically, like it was keeping time with my thoughts. Around 2 a.m., I got up, walked downstairs, and sat in the dark living room, listening to the silence of my house. A home that felt emptier than ever before. I decided I needed clarity. Not confrontation, not accusations, just truth. The following Monday, I took the day off. Told the office I was under the weather. With Lily at school, I had the house to myself and time to think. I went into Allison's side of the closet and began searching, carefully, respectfully, but with purpose. I wasn't looking for secrets. I was looking for answers. That's when I found the receipt. Tucked inside the zippered lining of her overnight bag was a folded square of glossy paper. A credit card charge from 3 weekends ago. Greenwood Heights Apartments, leasing office, $150. The memo line, weekend guest access. My heart thudded like a dropped drum. Apartments? I double-checked the address. It wasn't near any of her friends' homes. It wasn't near anything. It was out in a quieter suburb, almost 45 minutes in the opposite direction she always claimed to be going. And I'd never heard her mention Greenwood Heights once. I placed the receipt back, memorizing every detail. Over the next few days, I did what any rational man in my position would do. I became irrational. I drove to Greenwood Heights on my lunch break. It was a clean, modern complex with red brick buildings, wrought iron balconies, and a fountain in the courtyard. A woman in yoga pants walked her golden retriever across the lot as I parked across the street. I watched, waited, and then, at exactly 1:04 p.m., I saw her, Allison, walking briskly across the parking lot in sunglasses, pulling her car keys from that same sleek black bag. She didn't see me. She got into a car I didn't recognize, a dark gray SUV, newer than ours. She pulled out and drove away. I followed her until I saw her turn into the Whole Foods parking garage 2 miles down. Then I looped back, parked, and walked to the leasing office. "Hi," I said, masking my nerves with a smile. "I'm helping my sister look for a weekend place near here. She mentioned she used a guest pass recently." At Greenwood Heights? The receptionist nodded, polite but bored. Sure, we do weekend guest access through a friend's lease. Who's the leaseholder? I tried to look casual. Allison Rowe. She typed quickly, squinting at the screen. Yeah, she's on a flexible lease. Month to month, weekend access. My throat tightened. Do you know which unit? She shook her head. Sorry, we don't give that out. I nodded and walked out before my hands started shaking. So, she had a lease. A secret apartment. For weekends. I didn't go home right away. I parked under a tree in the nearby library lot and just sat there, watching wind stir the golden leaves on the pavement. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared, my brain buzzing with static. Everything I thought I knew had been turned inside out. She didn't just lie about where she was going. She'd gone so far as to create an entirely separate life, one that I wasn't part of. Was it another man? A second life? Drugs? Something else entirely? I didn't know, but I would. That night, I acted like nothing had happened. I smiled, asked about her weekend, nodded when she said her friend Melissa was getting serious with some guy named Evan. I made pasta. We watched an episode of a show we'd been pretending to enjoy. She laughed at a joke. Her eyes crinkled the way they always did. But all I saw was the apartment. The double life. The ghost of a woman I thought I knew. The following Friday, I waited until she left again. This time, I followed her. From the moment she turned onto the freeway to the exit near Greenwood Heights, I stayed 5 or 6 cars back. She never noticed. She pulled into the complex, used a key fob to enter the gated lot, and parked. I waited 30 minutes before I approached the building. I didn't follow her inside. I didn't need to. I just needed to know which unit. I waited until someone else exited the building, and then I slipped in, counting the floors, reading the mailboxes. Unit 307, A row. I stared at it until the letters blurred. I left. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew I couldn't go home and pretend again. So I drove. Past our house, past the familiar streets, past the elementary school where Lily played at recess. I ended up parked by the river, where we used to picnic before we had kids. Before things became complicated, the city lights flickered across the water. My reflection in the windshield looked older than I remembered. My phone buzzed. A text from Allison. Miss you. Be home Sunday. Kiss Lily for me. I stared at the message for a long time, then turned off the screen. By Monday morning, I had a plan. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I needed to see the apartment for myself. So, the next time she left, I made a bold move. I waited until mid-Saturday, drove to Greenwood Heights, and parked near the side entrance. I didn't expect the door to be open, but it was. And what I found inside Unit 307, well, that's where everything changed. Unit 307 was unremarkable from the outside. A standard brown door, silver numbers, peephole at eye level. Nothing about it whispered secrets. Nothing about it screamed betrayal. And yet, as I stood outside that door, my palms damp and my breath shallow, I felt like I was standing at the edge of a fault line, seconds before the earth split open. I knocked. Not because I expected an answer. I already knew Allison wasn't there. Her car was gone, and I'd watched her drive off an hour earlier. I knocked because I needed a moment to decide what kind of man I was about to become. Then I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the spare key I'd had made at a kiosk based on the key she kept in her desk drawer at home, and slid it into the lock. It clicked easily. The door opened with the kind of silence that made my skin crawl. Inside, it smelled faintly of lemon and something floral, jasmine, maybe. A scent I'd never smelled on Allison at home. The floors were dark hardwood, immaculate. The living room was minimalist. A cream-colored couch, a pale blue throw blanket, a single framed photo on the side table. I picked it up. It was of Allison, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, fit, maybe late 30s. Blonde hair, strong jaw. The kind of man you see in ads for luxury watches. They stood close, too close for a casual friend. His arm around her waist, her smile pressed against his shoulder. The caption on the frame, Weekend number 12, Sea Ranch. My fingers tightened around the edge of the photo until I realized I was about to break it. I placed it back down. I didn't need confirmation anymore. I had it. The entire apartment was confirmation. This wasn't some crash pad. This wasn't where she went to read or decompress. This was a second life, a second love, a second home. I walked through the space like I was in a museum curated by someone I used to know. In the bedroom, the bed was made tightly. Crisp, hotel style. On the nightstand, 2 books, one by her side, one by his. A man's watch rested in a ceramic dish, silver, engraved. A pair of his shoes were neatly lined up in the closet, right beside hers. I didn't touch anything. I couldn't. Even breathing in there felt like an intrusion. The walls had seen more of her than I had in months. The sheets held the imprint of another man. The air buzzed with echoes of laughter that wasn't mine. In the bathroom, 2 toothbrushes, 2 towels, a robe that wasn't hers. And on the counter, a birth control pill pack. Half empty. So she wasn't just seeing him. She was protecting herself from him. Or from me. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It wasn't just physical. It was calculated, layered, methodical, and worst of all, she was good at it. I left the apartment, locking the door behind me with mechanical precision. Back in the car, I sat motionless. My phone buzzed, and for a moment I thought it might be her. But it was a work notification, an alert about an upcoming project deadline. I stared at it, almost laughing. Deadlines, client revisions, zoning reports, none of it mattered now. The world I had lived in, the one where Allison and I were partners, where I knew my role and my purpose, had already crumbled. And now I had to decide what kind of man I was going to be standing in its rubble. The next day, I began collecting evidence. It was no longer about catching her in the act. She was already caught. Now it was about control. I photographed everything inside the apartment. The framed photo, the pill pack, the books, the towels, the watch. I didn't know the legal rules, but I knew enough to keep it quiet until I had what I needed. I placed a small camera above the doorframe of Unit 307, angled downward. Motion triggered, battery operated, linked to my phone. Then I returned home and acted as if nothing had happened. The next few weeks were a blur of pretending. I played the role of attentive husband, caring father, productive architect. I packed Lily's lunches, helped her with school projects, even fixed the leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom. I made love to Allison once, just once, on a night when she initiated. I felt nothing, less than nothing. She kissed me afterward and said, "You've seemed distracted lately." I smiled. "Just work stuff." She nodded, satisfied, and rolled over. She had no idea what I was preparing. By the 3rd week, I had a folder on my desktop, labeled innocuously as Q4 proposals. Inside, time-stamped footage of her and the man, her lover, entering the apartment, kissing at the door, carrying groceries, sometimes laughing, sometimes barely clothed. I still didn't know his name, but he was consistent. He arrived every other weekend like clockwork, sometimes alone, sometimes with her. One evening, they brought takeout and wine. Another time, she wore a silk robe I'd never seen before, and he carried her through the doorway like a groom with his bride. It was cinematic. If it hadn't been my life, I might have appreciated the artistry of it. I began visiting the apartment during the week. Always cautious. Always brief. One day, I found receipts in the kitchen drawer. Dinner dates. Hotel stays. Spa weekends. All billed to a card I didn't know she had. She'd created an entire financial world outside of me. Secret credit. Separate savings. Hidden pathways. She hadn't just lied. She'd planned for this. She was disappearing, piece by piece, every weekend. And I had let her. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing how easy it had been for her. All those weekends I stayed home with Lily. All those times I covered for her without knowing I was covering for someone else's romance. All those quiet Sundays when she returned, claiming she was exhausted from catching up with the girls. I'd loved her with a kind of innocence that now felt humiliating. And that love had made me blind. It all came to a head one night when I picked Lily up from ballet class. She bounced into the car, her pink leotard slightly askew, hair in a messy bun, cheeks flushed. "Daddy," she said. Mommy's friend was there again. I looked at her in the rearview. Which friend? The tall one. The man with the funny voice. He picked her up once when I had practice. "Did he say anything to you?" She shrugged. "He said hi. Mommy said not to tell you." My grip on the steering wheel turned to stone. "Why not?" I asked gently. She said it'd ruin the surprise. That night, while Lily slept soundly down the hall, I stared at the ceiling above our bed and realized the game had shifted. This wasn't just a secret affair anymore. She was preparing for something. Maybe to leave. Maybe to stay. But change everything. And I couldn't allow either. The next morning, I did what I never thought I'd do. I went to a lawyer. Her office was small but efficient. Coldly professional. I handed her the folder labeled Q for Proposals. She clicked through the images, eyes unreadable. When she was done, she looked at me over the top of her glasses. How do you want to play this? I exhaled. Slowly. I want her to think everything's normal. She nodded. You want leverage. I nodded back. Yes. A week later, Allison returned from another weekend with the girls. She kissed my cheek, spun a story about brunch and spa treatments, and poured herself a glass of wine. I watched her from the kitchen doorway. Everything about her was familiar. The way she crossed her legs, the angle she held her wine glass, the cadence of her lies. But the woman I knew was gone, and the woman who replaced her was walking straight into a trap she never saw coming. It's amazing how quiet a war can be when it starts inside your own home. No explosions, no shouting matches. Just the slow, deliberate ticking of a plan unfolding, every second building toward the inevitable. By the time October arrived, I'd played the role of the oblivious husband so convincingly, I almost believed it myself. I cooked dinner, helped Lily carve pumpkins, even laughed at Allison's stories about her imaginary brunches and girl weekends. She was confident, relaxed. That's exactly how I wanted her. What she didn't know was that I now had her passwords. Every single one. It took weeks of careful watching, but eventually, I cracked her patterns, birth dates, pet names, rearranged anniversaries. Most people are predictable. Allison, despite the web of lies, was no exception. And once I had access, her second life unraveled before me like thread off a spool. The man's name was Darren Ward. He was a regional sales director for a pharmaceutical company. Divorced. No kids. Lived in a sleek condo downtown, the kind with elevators that opened directly into your unit. His LinkedIn was polished. His smile in every profile picture screamed practice charm. He wasn't some drifter. He was the kind of man people respected, hired, dated. And he had no idea he was about to become the centerpiece of my quiet little war. Their emails were intimate. Not just physical, but emotional. They joked about running away together, about escaping the performances of their other lives. In one message, she wrote, "Sometimes I wish I could just stay in 307 forever. The rest of the world feels like a role I'm forced to play. But with you, I can breathe." My stomach churned as I read it. Another email, this one from Darren, said, "He doesn't see you. Not like I do. He thinks your routine is you. But I see the fire behind it. The hunger. You're not a wife, Allison. You're a woman who's been trapped." I wanted to smash the laptop against the wall. Instead, I copied every word into my backup drive. But even with all this evidence, something didn't sit right. I couldn't shake the feeling that Darren wasn't just another affair. Allison wasn't reckless. She was careful, calculated. She'd hidden this apartment for nearly a year. That took planning. And based on what I found in her email drafts, some never sent, it seemed she was preparing for more than a long-term affair. She was preparing for a new life. One without me. There was a folder buried deep in her cloud storage. Password protected, but by now I knew her patterns. When it opened, I stared in disbelief. Inside were scanned copies of legal documents, lease agreements, banking forms, a divorce template. My name on all of it. Except she'd never filed anything. Not yet. That Friday, I took Lily to the zoo. She loved the giraffes, especially the youngest one with the crooked ear. We ate ice cream, watched the sea lions, and for a few blissful hours, the weight pressing down on me lifted. But as we sat on the tram ride back to the parking lot, Lily leaned her head against my arm and whispered, "Mommy's boyfriend is funny." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice tight. "He tells jokes. He makes her laugh. I saw them once. They didn't see me." She sounded so casual, so innocent. I wanted to cry. "Where did you see them?" She shrugged. "Outside the dance studio. I went to the bathroom and came back early. They were by her car." I nodded slowly, not letting her see the storm building behind my eyes. Allison hadn't just hidden Darren from me. She'd let our daughter see him. The next day, I filed a request with my lawyer. Full custody, should divorce proceedings be initiated. I wasn't going to wait for Allison to act first. I wanted control, not just over the narrative, but over Lily's safety, her world. I couldn't have her bouncing between homes, tangled in lies and emotional instability. My lawyer, Ellen Keats, nodded solemnly. "We'll build this airtight," she said. "You're calm, collected, and you have hard evidence. Judges respect that." I handed her a USB drive. Everything's on there. She raised an eyebrow as she took it. You've done your homework. You have no idea, I said. By mid-November, I had everything I needed. Her schedule, her habits, her pressure points. All that was left was the reveal. But not just any reveal. No, I wanted something memorable. Something sharp. Something cinematic. I didn't want to shout or cry. I didn't want a messy confrontation or pleading apologies. I wanted to shatter her with quiet precision. The opportunity came faster than expected. Our firm was hosting a winter gala. A formal event, dinner and speeches, a chance to mingle with clients and potential investors. Spouses were invited. Allison, of course, offered to come. I'll try not to fall asleep during the speeches, she joked as she adjusted her dress in the mirror. I stood behind her, adjusting my tie, watching her reflection closely. You always look good in navy, I said. She smiled. That's why I wear it. She had no idea. At the gala, I kept my distance. I worked the room, made small talk, introduced Allison to a few colleagues. She smiled, laughed, played the part of the loving wife to perfection. And when dessert was served, I made my move. The projector screen flickered to life, scheduled for a short video showcasing the year's completed projects. But I'd replaced the file. 30 seconds in, the screen faded to black. And then a new video began. At first, just a still image, Allison and Darren, holding hands in the courtyard outside Unit 307. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Then came the footage, door cam clips, blurry but unmistakable. Them embracing, kissing, walking inside the apartment. The room went silent. I stood at the edge, watching her face. The color drained. Her hand reached for her wine glass, trembling. She stood, knocked the chair back, and hurried toward the exit. I let her go. That night, she didn't come home. I didn't expect her to. Instead, she called my phone at 2:14 a.m. I let it ring. The voicemail that followed was frantic, then angry, then pleading. I didn't respond. The next morning, Ellen filed the paperwork. Over the next week, I moved with quiet efficiency. Bank accounts were frozen. Joint credit cards disabled. The utilities were transferred into my name. I changed the locks, citing legal counsel and safety concerns. Lily stayed with me. Allison sent texts, some apologetic, others furious. But I stayed silent. I needed her to feel the void. Let her sit in that secret apartment with its curated pillows and lemon-scented air. Let her sit beside the man she'd built her fantasy with and see what was left once the dream collapsed. One morning, a knock at my door. I opened it to find Darren. He looked nervous, hands in his pockets, eyes flicking over my shoulder like he expected someone else to answer. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. What could we possibly have to talk about? He cleared his throat. She didn't tell me. About the kid. About the apartment being secret. I didn't know you were still living together. I stared at him. You think that makes it better? No. But I'm not trying to play hero. I ended it. I told her I couldn't be part of it anymore. She's not who I thought. I almost laughed. Welcome to the club. He looked away, embarrassed. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I said nothing. Then I turned and walked back inside. 3 days later, Allison showed up. Eyes puffy, makeup smeared. Can I come in? She asked, voice shaking. I stepped aside. Lily was at school. I'd made sure of that. She stood in the kitchen, staring at the photos still hanging on the wall. Lily at the beach, us at a wedding, her smiling at a candlelit table. It's all gone, isn't it? She whispered. No, I said. You gave it away. She swallowed. You were going to leave anyway. You'd already pulled away. I tilted my head. You didn't give me a chance. Tears welled in her eyes. I thought I needed more. I thought I needed something different. I folded my arms. Did you ever love him? She hesitated. I wanted to. That answer told me everything I needed. She tried to negotiate. Tried to explain. I listened, but my heart didn't move. I told her the terms were already in motion. That the lawyers would handle it. She asked to see Lily. I said of course, once custody was arranged. She left crying. But I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt free. That night, I tucked Lily into bed, brushing the hair from her forehead. Daddy, she whispered, is Mommy coming back? I hesitated. She'll visit. But this is our home now. She nodded sleepily, eyes drifting shut. I watched her breathe for a long time, anchoring myself in her rhythm. And in the quiet, I made a promise, not to Allison, not to Darren, but to Lily, that no one would ever disappear on her again. 2 weeks after the gala, the world around me had transformed. Quietly, subtly, but completely. Allison had moved into the apartment full-time. The one she used to escape to, now her only address. Darren, from what I gathered, had stepped back entirely. I wasn't certain how things had ended between them, but judging by the silence on his end, it wasn't a fairy tale finish. I didn't care. My attention was on Lily. We settled into a new rhythm. Mornings filled with cereal and cartoons, evenings with storybooks and late-night whispers about her day. She adjusted faster than I expected, quicker than I did. Occasionally, she'd ask when Mommy would come for dinner again, but she never pressed when the answer was vague. I couldn't lie to her outright, but I shielded her from the worst truths. Let her childhood remain a little bit intact, a little less scorched by her mother's choices. Allison had supervised visits on weekends. Saturdays from noon to 5. We met at a neutral park, always in public, always brief. She tried to bring Lily toys and snacks, tried to paint on a smile that looked more like a mask every week. But Lily saw through it. Kids always do. "Mommy's sad," she said one evening after coming home. "Maybe," I said carefully, "but she still loves you." Lily nodded, thoughtful. "I know, but you love me better." Meanwhile, the legal machinery churned on. Allison tried to slow the proceedings. Her lawyer floated half-hearted proposals about shared custody, partial spousal support, visitation expansion. My attorney, Ellen, batted them down like a seasoned fencer. She was clinical, calm, relentless. The email evidence, the apartment, the surveillance footage, the false representations, none of it sat well with the judge. Especially not the exposure to Lily. That, more than anything, made the court wary of giving Allison any substantial foothold. She'd overplayed her hand. And now, she was playing catch-up in a game she never thought she'd lose. Still, I waited. Because what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had one more move left. The kind of move you only use once. On a rainy Tuesday in late November, I made a call to a friend I hadn't spoken to in nearly 5 years. Landon Pace. We'd worked together on a few commercial developments before he pivoted to real estate full-time. But before that, he was a private investigator. A good one. The kind who didn't ask why you needed the dirt, just how deep you wanted him to dig. Still chasing shadows for people? I asked as soon as he answered. He laughed. Only the expensive ones. "What's up, Nate?" I gave him the short version. He didn't ask many questions. Just told me to email what I had and give him a week. "I'll find something," he said, and I believed him. What I didn't expect was just how much he'd find. By the end of the week, Landon sent me a file so heavy it nearly crashed my laptop. Inside were phone logs, receipts, camera stills, parking records. Turns out, Allison hadn't just lied to me. She'd lied to Darren, too. And not just about being married, but about who she was. According to the lease and the building records, she'd signed the apartment under the name Amanda Walsh. Her email exchanges with Darren had also used that alias. Her online profiles, new ones I hadn't known about, used different job descriptions, different locations, even different parents' names. She had created a complete alternate identity. Landon's final note in the file was succinct. "This isn't just infidelity, Nate. She was building a life outside the law. You could get this reviewed for fraud or identity falsification if you want to go nuclear." I stared at those words for a long time. Go nuclear. The next Saturday, I met Allison at the park. She wore sunglasses even though it was cloudy. Her coat was long and dark, too formal for a playground. Lily ran to her with the kind of mixed enthusiasm that stung, excited to see her, but cautious. They sat on the bench with their hot cocoa, and I watched from a nearby bench, trying not to let my disdain cloud my face. When Allison walked Lily back to me at 5 sharp, she lingered. "Can we talk?" "Go ahead," I said flatly. She shifted her weight. "I didn't want this to go this way." "Didn't you?" I asked. She flinched. "Not like this." I stayed quiet. "I've lost everything," she said. "I lost him. I lost the apartment. I'm being pushed into a corner, and I don't even know who I am anymore." That last line hung in the air, because I now knew exactly who she was, and who she wasn't. "I think you do," I said coldly. "You just don't like the answer." She looked like she wanted to cry, but I didn't feel sorry for her anymore. Not after what I'd found. 3 days later, Ellen and I met in her office to draft the final play. It was time for Allison to know what we knew. We mailed the file to her attorney, sealed, time-stamped. with a cover letter summarizing the extent of her deception. We didn't threaten criminal charges. We didn't need to. But the implications were clear. False identities, tax misreporting, financial misrepresentation. She could lose more than custody. She could lose her future. The response came fast. Her lawyer folded immediately, offering complete surrender. Full custody to me. No spousal support. No contesting the division of assets. She would walk away with nothing but her clothes, her car, and a few personal belongings. In exchange, we would not pursue charges. It was everything I wanted. And yet, when Ellen showed me the email, I didn't smile. I just nodded. "This is the cleanest ending you'll ever get," she said. I knew she was right. That night, I poured a glass of whiskey and stood by the window, watching the snow start to fall. The house was quiet. Lily was asleep upstairs, her nightlight glowing faintly under the door. The tree was already up, just barely decorated. She insisted we start early this year. "This Christmas has to be perfect," she'd said. It wouldn't be, but it would be honest. And that was something. The next morning, Allison came to collect the last of her things. She was pale, tired, older than I remembered her being. She avoided my eyes as she moved through the house, boxing up what was left of her life here. Photos, books, some clothes. When she reached the living room, she paused at the mantel. Her fingers brushed against a framed picture of Lily and me, taken at the pumpkin patch last year. She stared at it. Then, softly, she said, "You're going to raise her to hate me." I shook my head. "No." She looked up, surprised. "She'll know the truth when she's ready," I said. "Not because I tell her, but because eventually she'll start to ask the right questions. And you better hope you have the courage to answer them." She nodded, blinking fast. "I'm sorry," she said. I didn't answer, because I didn't believe her. And maybe that was the worst part of all, that when your trust dies, even the apologies sound rehearsed. She closed the door behind her. And just like that, she was gone. Not just from the house, but from the chapter of my life that once felt like forever. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because 4 days later, Landon called again. "Nate," he said, his voice tight, "you're not going to believe what I just found." And what he told me next. It changed everything. When Landon called, I was standing in the garage, stacking boxes labeled Winter, Donate, and Lily, Outgrown. My hands froze as soon as I heard the urgency in his voice. "You're not going to believe what I just found," he said. I didn't speak. I waited. He took a breath. "The guy, Darren? He's not who you think he is." My gut tightened. What does that mean? He's not just a sales director. Or rather, he is, but he's also your wife's ex-boyfriend. From college. They dated for years. She scrubbed every trace of it from her social media, but the alumni forums, graduation archives, and archived web pages, they tell the truth. They were inseparable. A pause. She was engaged to him. They broke it off 6 months before she met you. I leaned against the workbench. The air in the garage felt suddenly thinner. "She never told me," I said quietly. Landon chuckled dryly. "That's not even the kicker. Ready for the fun part?" "No, go on." He didn't come back into her life by chance. He looked her up, reached out. They reconnected 2 years ago. Slowly at first, then regularly. I found emails from that far back, buried in archived folders on her account. She never deleted them, just hid them. He planned this. She helped. My pulse roared in my ears. "This apartment," Landon continued. "He paid for the first 6 months up front. Used a dummy business expense. They planned it together. To see if the spark was still there. To create space away from her old life. That's what they called it." He paused, letting that sink in. "She was building a future with him, Nate. You weren't just collateral damage. You were a closed chapter in her eyes. She was rewriting the story, and you weren't in it." I couldn't speak. "She lied to both of you," he added. "But to you? She lied for years." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Thank you," I said, barely above a whisper. "I'll send everything over. You good?" Landon asked. I didn't answer. I hung up. That night, I sat in the living room long after Lily had gone to bed. The snow outside was falling harder now, frosting the windows and muffling the world. The Christmas lights blinked softly in the corner, the tree a monument to normalcy. But nothing felt normal. I thought I had already accepted the betrayal. I thought I had seen it all, endured it, responded to it, come out the other side. But this was betrayal with premeditation. This wasn't a lapse. It was a decision, a strategy, A multi-year deception wrapped in Sunday smiles and whispered lies. She hadn't just strayed. She had erased me, bit by bit, until I was nothing but the background to her second chance with him. And still, I hadn't burned it all down. Yet, the next day, I met Allison at the courthouse. It was just a routine filing, one last signature, one more step toward finalization. She looked thin, pale, a shadow of the confident woman who used to twirl in the kitchen after too much wine. When she sat down beside me in the waiting area, she didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, I heard from Darren. I turned my head slightly. And he's gone. Moved out of the city. Took a job in Austin. I said nothing. She laughed once, bitterly. He said I ruined his life. That he never should have come back. Still, I said nothing. She turned to face me, eyes hollow. Did you do something? Did you threaten him? No. I replied, calm and steady. He saw the truth. Just like I did. She looked away, jaw tight. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. I do, I said. You're someone who made her choice. Again and again. Her eyes filled with tears. I miss her, she said. Lily. She misses the version of you who was honest, I said quietly. She's still waiting for her to come back. That night, I sat Lily down and told her, carefully, that Mommy wouldn't be living nearby anymore. That we'd be spending Christmas, just the two of us. That things would be different. She nodded with surprising maturity for a 7-year-old. Will she call me? She asked. She'll try, I said. And when you're ready, you can answer. Or not. That's your choice. Lily thought for a long moment. Then, I want to be like you when I grow up. I blinked, stunned. Why? Because you don't disappear. Christmas came and went. Quiet. Cozy. Just the two of us and a few close friends who insisted on dropping by with gifts and casseroles. The house was filled with warmth. Not the artificial kind. The real kind. It was the first time in months I felt truly at peace. The phone rang once on Christmas morning. Her name flashed across the screen. I silenced it. 3 weeks later, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. It was from Allison. It wasn't long. Just a page. I'm sorry. For all of it. Not just the affair, but for making you question your own worth. For treating your love like it was disposable. I see now that the life I had wasn't broken. I was. And instead of fixing myself, I tried to start over. I lost everything. And I deserved to. There was no request for forgiveness. No plea for another chance. Just an admission. A small one. I folded it neatly, placed it in a drawer I rarely opened, and left it there. Spring came. The snow melted. The days grew longer. Lily began piano lessons. I built her a treehouse. Life didn't return to normal. It reshaped into something new. And one morning, I stood at the kitchen counter, stirring coffee, when I realized something. I was happy. Not in the performative way, not the social media version of it, but deep down. In the marrow. In the silence. I had walked through the fire and come out scarred, but standing. And stronger. Months later, I ran into Darren. Of all places, at a bookstore. He was just passing through, he said. On his way to a wedding. He looked uncomfortable. Hair shorter, suit too tight in the shoulders. I owe you an apology, he said. I shrugged. You didn't know. He looked me in the eye. I should have. I nodded once. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't need closure. I had peace. One evening, as Lily and I sat on the porch, watching the sky go lavender with dusk, she turned to me and said, Do people forget who they are sometimes? I considered the question carefully. Sometimes, I said, but the people who matter always remember. She rested her head on my arm. Then I won't forget you. And in that moment, with the breeze lifting her hair and the quiet world around us, I understood. It wasn't revenge that gave me peace. It was survival. It was choosing to live after being broken. To love again, differently, fiercely, quietly, and never, ever disappear.